guys, my name is Tori, and for my final presentation for astronomy, I chose to do it on constellations. I've always been very interested in constellations, so being able to get the opportunity to study them and find out what they truly mean is very exciting to me. So let's get started. A little bit of introduction. My main objective of this assignment is to give an in-depth lesson on constellations. My second objective is to explain why they are important and what is the real purpose of knowing this information. Some of the questions I'm going to be asking are: how are they created? Why do they exist? What is the importance of them? And who is responsible for them and the creation of them? I'm going to be answering the 5 W's and 1 H, being who, what, when, where, why, and how. So let's get started. So, who created the constellations? The constellations were invented. They were not discovered. The constellations are just easy to remember patterns in the stars. The most of the famous ones were invented before the beginning of recorded history. Orion, for example, has a history dating back before 4000 BC. Our modern constellation system comes from the ancient Greeks. The oldest description of the constellations, as we know, comes from a poem. However, it is clear from the poem that the constellations mentioned originated long before that. The 2nd century AD Greek-Egyptian astronomer and mathematician Ptolemy was the author of what was considered to be the first astronomical star catalog, called the Almagest, which names 48 constellations and contains positions of more than 1,000 stars. These 48 form the basis of our modern constellation system. Ptolemy's star catalog remained in use for the next 1,400 years. Over the years, astronomers have added constellations to fill the gaps between Ptolemy's figures and map the uncharted region of the sky near the south celestial pole. The formalized naming of the patterns seen in the star groupings began as means of discerning heavenly interactions between the gods and humankind. These representations varied between different cultures and reflected each culture's specific theological belief system. It eventually discovered that the positions of various star groups, or constellations, as they later became known to be called, could also aid in the navigation and geographic orientation. So what are the constellations? What exactly are the constellations, and what are the constellations named after? The constellations were named to be easily identified for cultural and religious reasons. Most of the constellations were created and named during the bulk of the Mesopotamian era. There are different types of constellations, called the circumpolar constellations, the spring, summer, autumn, and winter constellations. Each of these constellations they're seen during different time periods. The circumpolar constellations are those that form constellations of the northern hemisphere. They are visible throughout the year and never hide. Circumpolar constellations are the ones located between the 40 and 50 degree latitude from the observation place. Spring constellations, as in autumn, the night sky gets altered. In spring, the firmament is characterized for having large expanses of sky free of stars that astronomers call the kingdom of galaxies. This is because hundreds of stars can be seen in this season as the swirl galaxy. Summer constellation, in contrast to the sky of the spring. In summer, the Earth is looking into the dense plane of our galaxy, towards the galactic center, the star clouds of Sagittarius. Autumn constellations, there is a change. Instead of the abundance of nebula and clusters of summer sky, now offers numerous galaxies located far away from ours. So each of these systems, you can see constellations from different locations, which is so cool. And finally, the winter constellations are the most common, and some of them that are in this category are Orion. And speaking of Orion, this constellation is called Orion. the constellation of Orion is one of the most familiar constellations in the night sky. And like I was going to talk about previously in this slide, the story behind the well-known ones, the story behind Orion. Orion was a great hunter. He once boasted that he could slay all the creatures on Earth. This made Mother Earth very angry. She sent a deadly scorpion to attack him. Later, Zeus turned both Orion and the scorpion into the sky as constellations. And some more facts about Orion, since we're talking about specific constellations. Orion is visible in both the northern and southern hemispheres. In the northern hemisphere, the constellation can be seen from late autumn to early spring. In the southern hemisphere, Orion can be seen in the summer months, and it will appear upside down though. The constellations mainly consist of bright blue supergiant stars, and they're most notable except being the red supergiant, which lies on Orion's shoulder. The when. When were they created, and when do you see them? Some constellations are only visible in northern hemispheres, while others are only visible in the southern hemispheres. Constellations that are visible in both hemispheres may appear upside down in the southern hemisphere. A few constellations can be seen and viewed all year long, but most are seasonal and can only be viewed in certain times of the year. Just like I previously talked about the spring, summer, autumn, and winter constellations. Most of them are not seen all year, but only a few you can. The where. Where do individual star names come from? The ancient Greek tradition was to name stars by their position within the constellation. The art of giving stars proper names has been lost on modern culture. Today, in most cases, the stars are simply giving numerical descriptors to signify their position in the night sky. That number is associated with a particular star catalog, which groups of stars together by some particular property, or by the instrument that made the initial discovery. While it's not as pleasing to the ear as each individual names, these star naming conventions are useful when searching for a particular type of star in a particular region of the sky, since they are grouped together. It's often the case when looking at research. All astronomers around the world agreed to use the same numerical descriptors as to avoid confusion. Speaking of stars, this is a star chart. To find constellations, you'll need a star chart, which I posted in this video. These give you a snapshot of what the night sky will look like at one specific time at any location. The star chart I placed in this presentation is how the night sky will look in most of the United States at 8 p.m. in mid-January. I know it's specific, but it'll help. These maps seem rather baffling and confusing at times, but they're actually not that hard to use. To make it seem easier, the chart above shows constellations, but normally they will indicate stars, galaxies, nebulas, and planets. The first thing you notice about is that east and west seem to be in the wrong area. They seem to be flip-flopped. But this makes sense. If you imagine you're holding this chart right above your head, this is how they're designed to be used. It becomes apparent that this is not the case. The outer edge of the chart indicates the horizon. So, the further the stars are from the edge, the higher they'll be seen in the sky. The center of the chart shows the stars and constellations that will be directly overhead. To find your bearings, it is helpful to find Polaris, the star which always points north. First, find the famous Big Dipper, which is part of the constellation Ursa Major and visible all year in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, it is helpful to find the Southern Cross, which always points south. Once you find those, it is easier to find your bearings a little bit better. Once you found your bearings, you can start searching the constellations and the objects they contain. Using the chart, if you look south, you'll notice the constellation Orion. It's the most recognizable constellation. There are many other fascinating objects to look out for, and the star chart will be essential for guiding you around the night sky. Stars do not stay fixed in the night sky as the Earth rotates. They change position. That's why I was so specific when finding this chart. Most constellations are also seasonal, meaning that they are visible in winter, and if they're visible in winter, they might not be visible in the summer, and vice versa. Constellations may also be drawn slightly different on each chart, and it's also very important to note where the northern and southern hemispheres of these charts lie, so you're not getting your constellations confused. So why? Why were they created, and why are they important? Why were they created? The constellations were created for ancient sailors to help them find their way at the sea. And they're important because the celestial constellations have religious and cultural significances. They also can be used to navigate tools by orientation star maps at certain times of night to match up. How? How did the constellations get their names? Most constellations got their names from Latin origin, and they're dating from the Roman Empire. But they also originated in the distant past of late human civilizations. The 19th century, the night sky had become overcrowded with overlapping and often contradictory constellations bounding the names with different schools of astronomy prepared their own versions of star maps. To get rid of the confusion, the names or boundaries were official, and they were assigned to the 88 constellations by the International Astronomer Union in 1930, providing complete coverage of the entire sky. How do the signs of the zodiac relate to astronomy? A lot of people start the day by checking their zodiac and checking their horoscope. The 12 constellations of the zodiac are no more important to the astronomers than the other 76 constellations. The significance of the zodiac stems from the fact that the ecliptic, the narrow path of the sky that the sun, moon, and planets follow, run directly through the star groupings. How many constellations are there? Astronomers officially recognize 88 constellations covering the entire sky in the northern and southern hemisphere. Currently, there are 14 men and women, 9 birds, 2 insects, 19 land animals, 10 water creatures, 2 centaurs, a serpent, a dragon, a flying horse, a river, and 29 inanimate objects that are represented in the night sky. And the total is only as low as 88 because a lot of them are in more than one constellation. It's important to realize that the great majority of the star patterns don't really show resemblance, but the ancient constellation makers probably meant for them to be symbolic. So my thoughts. I thought that there's so much more to constellations than just looking at the patterns in the sky. They've helped sailors, they've helped us find our way from the past, and even more so today, we use them to signify our history. The gods and their myths are also from the constellations. They're not just stars and they're not just pictures. We use them and they really do have significance. So, in conclusion, constellations are star patterns in the night sky. I know it's a given, but these are just some things to take away. If you don't remember anything else I've talked about, it's these 4 points. That they're patterns in the sky. There are 88 official constellations. A lot of the pictures in them are not very well seen, but that's because it leaves room for your imagination. Different constellations become visible throughout the year in different time periods, and the ones that are visible all throughout the year could be seen upside down. And the zodiac constellations found where the sun, moon, and planets move. So hopefully, when you're looking at your horoscope and you find out what sign you are, you can look a little bit into your constellation and look into what yours actually means. So I hope from this video and this presentation that you have a little better understanding of constellations and that I was able to provide you with some information on this topic. So thank you so much.